record now. Hello everybody, don't tell me, ask me. I'm Beverley Webb and I'm a chrysalis effect recovery practitioner and I'm a mentor coach. So I enable my clients to overcome stress, trauma and particularly adverse childhood experiences such as abuse, etc. So as a chrysalis effect practitioner, I'm a referral practitioner and we tend to work with each other at different times, depending on our clients' needs. So I'd like to introduce you today to Kuljit, who's joining me in the conversation today. And Kuljit, hello.
Hi Bev, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good, Kuljit. Would you like to take a few minutes just to give a background of who you are, what you do, before we start the conversation?
Great, thanks Bev. I'm a chrysalis effect specialist practitioner and I work mainly with people who suffer with chronic pain and trauma and medically unexplained symptoms. So I help them free themselves from all of that. I was an optometrist for 20 years and I had an experience of fibromyalgia, and so that's what led me into this. And I've trained with trauma and lots of somatic, so body-based modalities to help my clients free themselves from something I think we often think we're really stuck with, and that's the way it is. It's not true and it can be quite surprising.
Oh, sounds interesting. So part of what we do in this program is we do something called best and worst, Kuljit, and it's something I used to always do with my children because then it opens conversations. Okay. So as we've just had a bank holiday weekend, I'm going to start just to give you an idea. So it's been a long weekend and we are in isolation currently still. And my best, well, I have to say for me was the sunshine, because I'm very lucky and I've got a garden, and having the opportunity to sit in that garden in the sunshine, what is one of my bests. My worst, I think, and to be honest, it wasn't a worst in the end, but it was something in my mind. I thought it was going to be my worst, being a long weekend, being a bank holiday, not being able to see my children, and when I say children, they're young adults.
Yeah.
And not seeing friends for the weekend. So yeah, that's got to be my worst. And what about yourself, Kuljit?
For me, the best was similar to you, the sunshine. The whole family, we were all out there, even my son who sits at his laptop for hours. And again, he's a young adult, so he can be at his computer for hours and hours. Even he came out. We had some family games, a bit of badminton, archery. And it was great to be outdoors, actually, in the fresh air, in the beautiful weather. Yeah. And loving my garden, just tending my garden a little bit as well.
Oh, yes. And your worst?
My worst was actually, there was a couple of things, actually. First, my daughter's away in Birmingham. She's still working, so she was away and we'd normally be together at Easter. So that was one thing. And the other was really with music coming in from neighbours, from my son, with the TV going on sometimes. It was overstimulation. So it was not having the space for me sometimes. I'm feeling a bit overstimulated with too many things from too many directions.
Yeah, I hear you there.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to this at the end of the programme because we have what we call a reframing section.
Okay.
So we're going to go into the conversation now. And what we'd be really interested to hear from you, Kuljit, is more about the pain work that you do.
Okay.
And, and how pain is actually a symptom of different things going on in our body.
Absolutely. This is my favourite subject. So I've been fascinated by pain. I wasn't always, but I became fascinated after my own recovery from fibromyalgia. And It's been really surprising because I never really knew about pain. I'd never really thought about it. And even from a young age, I'd really learned to numb it out, not to feel it. So as a young child, I used to fall a lot. I was always grazed, always spraining my ankles. And it didn't really bother me because I just pushed it away, numbed it out, and just carried on doing what I was doing. And it wasn't until I couldn't escape it and I couldn't get away from it when I developed fibromyalgia that I had no choice but to deal with it. It was right there and I couldn't escape it.
So how old were you at that age?
I was in my early 40s.
Okay, so you were, and pardon me, ophthalmist?
Optometrist.
Optometrist. And could you just go into what does an optometrist do? See, I'm struggling with my words.
That's okay. So really, I tested eyes. So I trained for 4 years, 3 years of degree, then a year's training in practice. And then I qualified and registered with the General Optical Council. And then I was in a room, often without a window, all day, testing people's eyes for glasses. So I always helped them try and see a bit more clearly. And that was seeing their external world, because when I was at university, I used to go blind in my left eye. And they never really found the cause. And it was at that time that I realized how much we take for granted our vision, our eyesight. And in my final year, I did my final year project dissertation on this thing that was making me go blind. I didn't really get any answers, but I think that's really where I always thought, well, we do take our vision for granted. So it was quite fun for me to help people see more clearly.
Wow. So you've really come from a different different end of the medical world.
Yeah, very scientific, very medical. We learn hundreds and hundreds of eye conditions, and we learned the labels for them. So it was, right, this is this thing, this is what you do. You refer, or you give eye drops, or this is a treatment. And never once did I ask, well, why did it go wrong? And it surprises me now that I never asked that. But it's fascinating when you're just learning and you're taught what you taught, how you just go along with it without actually asking questions. So it was very scientific, very medical. This is the condition, this is the treatment, and that's what I learned, really.
Yeah. So coming back to yourself now, so you're in your 40s, you've got fibromyalgia and you're in pain.
Yeah.
So what was your next steps then? How did that affect your everyday life?
Oh, completely. It was like the world fell away from me. For me, it was like a near-death experience, because I could no longer work. I couldn't look after my children. So I had 3 children. My youngest was 4.5, 5 at the time. I couldn't be the wife, the mum. I literally couldn't do anything because the pain I had was constant. It would change in sensation, but it was so severe and excruciating often that it would just stop me and bring me to tears. And I never cried in front of anyone. That's not something I would ever have done. And it just took away all my peace. I always say that's how it felt at the time. I had no peace because I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand, I couldn't lie down without having pain all over my body. I even made my husband change the door handles on all the doors, because even just touching it, they were quite square, and touching them, I couldn't open the doors. I had to kind of nudge and hip them open. The pain was so severe. My whole skin was so sensitive. Couldn't hug my children, especially my youngest anymore. because I couldn't hide the pain.
No.
The tears would just, yeah.
And when you talk about the pain, where was it physically? Was it in one place? Was it in several places?
Well, that was really interesting. Not at the time, but
No.
how it started was I'd get different sensations in different parts of my body. So sometimes I got burning pain. For example, I had this burning pins and needles in my feet and my legs up to my knees for about 3 months. It just suddenly started, and it stayed for that long. Sometimes it would be sharp stabbing pain, sometimes it would feel like really deep pain, and sometimes it was quite unbearable. But as it progressed and got worse, it was just all over. Even my hair hurt, like just touching my hair. I wouldn't brush my hair for days because it just hurt, and I had no idea why.
So here we are now. So how did you get from there to today, being a practitioner?
Well, that was quite an enlightening journey, especially with my medical training. I'd always looked at pain just as the medical profession do, that it's there, it's a symptom, and you just get rid of it, or you try and get rid of it. And I'd never thought of it in any other way. So that was what I first tried. I went through the medical profession, had all the investigations, and was given some medication. That didn't work for me. It actually made me feel worse. I didn't think I could, but I was given amitriptyline, some really strong painkillers, omeprazole, and it didn't really affect the pain, so that wasn't any better at all. What it did do, it actually scared me, because I was out trying to drop my daughter to school, and I didn't know where I was. Suddenly I didn't know where I was. I couldn't cross a road. And that scared me, and I just stopped taking them. So I took them for about a week. I still thought medication was the key, and I had to get rid of it. So I went to a specialist, a private specialist in London, fibromyalgia specialist, and he gave me stronger painkillers, which I did use occasionally. What they did, they made me violently sick, but they actually knocked me out for 2 hours. So when I wasn't sleeping with the pain, which was pretty much every day, I would take those when I was desperate to sleep and just not feel it. And that's what I did. So I did take a few of those, but he then gave me trigger point injections, so in my back. And again, that triggered more pain for me. So after 2 months, I think just over 2 months of trying that and being told they might work, it might all kick in, it might work. And I was desperate, so I stuck with it. They didn't really help at all, and I had to stop, and there was nothing else that they could do. So I was kind of stuck with it.
Okay, so how did you find the chrysalis effect? What happened there?
Well, the chrysalis effect came to me after my recovery. So, I trained afterwards, because once I'd recovered and I no longer had pain and I really knew it was behind me, I had to climb a mountain to do that, to let that go. But once I'd recovered, I really wanted to get this information out to people, and I knew that I would no longer do optometry. I closed the door on that, and I knew I wanted to help people with chronic pain, because it was such a change point in my life. It changed everything, and it changed the way I looked at everything. So I just really knew this is what I was meant to be doing. And I trained with the chrysalis effect, because they had everything that we need to help clients with this. So they had the tools, they had the training, they had everything that I would have to start doing from scratch, and I didn't want to do that. So it was amazing training, and it filled me with confidence afterwards, that I just went out there and started doing it and helping people. So I actually came to it from after my recovery, but what I realized going through the chrysalis effect was all the things I did that the chrysalis effect now had that I might not have thought of, actually.
So what was your biggest learning about pain?
Oh, my biggest learning. Now, that was a complete 360 turn for me. So I'd always been taught that pain was physical, it was something wrong in the body, that there was some tissue damage, something going on that causes the pain. And what I had to learn, and I had to unlearn all of that. And what I learned was that emotional pain was the same as physical pain, and that just trying to get rid of it was never going to work. So it was really clear for me, because I developed these neuromas after my fibromyalgia. Things got worse. I developed arthritis and neuromas on my feet. Now they're lumps on the nerves in between the toes, and it stopped. I couldn't walk when I had these. And with the first one, I had cryotherapy, but they just kept developing. So I knew that I couldn't just keep having this operation, this cryotherapy, and I actually had to find the cause. And it was only when I realized that I had to be with the pain, I had to get the information from the pain, because our body is intelligent. So my body was creating all these symptoms, and the stress, the frustration, the loss, the pain, the anger, the blame, the shame I was feeling was actually maintaining my symptoms. And the key thing I learned was to be with the pain, not try and push it away, not fight it, not be angry with it, but just to be with it, and to gain the information as to why it was there. So that's what I started doing. Sorry about the sun's creeping in, so I'm just going to move around.
That's okay.
I'm not sure if you can see me at all. Oh, that's better.
That's lovely.
And so when I actually started thinking, actually the pain's not against me, it's going to give me some information, and then I can figure it out. There's a reason for it, and then I can figure it out. It changed how I felt about it. The other way, where you're suffering with pain and you don't know, and the medical profession can't find that physical cause, that's really disempowering. You're vulnerable. It feels like a really hopeless and helpless position. Whereas when I actually learned and discovered that there is a reason, and if there's a reason, then you can deal with it, I felt much more empowered. So I saw it from a completely different perspective, that, yeah, this is something I can deal with, and I just have to find the underlying cause. And it was all emotional pain and trauma, all of it for me. Yeah.
So your clients come to you either through the chrysalis effect, or they come to you independently. And when they come to you independently initially, what do they come to you for initially? The generic, because obviously there'll always be differences occasionally, but the generic client that comes to you.
The generic client that comes to me is usually with chronic pain, whether it's in one part of the body, whether they've been told it's old age and wear and tear, so it can be shoulders, hips. Sometimes it's unusual pain, actually, where they've got pain in a certain area of their stomach or certain joints, but it's not often all over the body. So I do get fibromyalgia clients, but I actually get quite a mix of unexplained symptoms and fibromyalgia, people who've been diagnosed. And I suppose they're different areas on the spectrum, really, is how I see it. So to get someone with pain just in one area is early on in the spectrum, early on in the degeneration and the process of developing more and more pain. And the fibromyalgia client who's as severe as I was, right on the other end, where all aspects of health are deteriorating, is really the other end of the scale. So I really do see it as a spectrum. And I'm happy to work with people either end of the spectrum, because for me, it's life-changing either way. When you learn to deal with any chronic symptom from a different perspective, it changes how you see it, how you feel. And that is physical. So that happens in your body. That's your physiology changing.
Yes, absolutely. And it's true to say, I mean, when we first become aware of chronic fatigue, ME, fibromyalgia, and we hear the link between physical, mental and emotional, sometimes when we try and speak about this with our clients or other people, there's a reluctance sometimes to hear that, because sometimes I've heard it's been said to me, what are you saying, that I've got my pains in my mind?
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Well, I know that experience, because going to the medical profession and them telling me after investigation, there's no reason you should be in the picture of health, when I was in constant pain and struggling to walk. I really did start to think, is it all in my head? Am I making this up? But actually it was real physical pain. And it is physical pain because it's happening in your body. So it just works the opposite way. So if we think of the medical profession, they look for an injury or tissue damage. So that sends the signal through your body's nervous system to the brain. This chronic pain and fibromyalgia pain is just as real. The symptom is the same, but it works the other way round. So it goes from your brain saying there's a danger signal, which is where I find a lot of people do have trauma and ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. The brain saying this is a danger signal, and it's using the same pathways, almost like circuits. I call them neurobiological circuits. So the brain signals using your pathways, and it sends pain signals all over your body, depending on where you are on that spectrum, so how your threshold is being breached. So it's the same but the opposite way.
And we often get the physical pain as a little bit of a warning, don't we? But some of us like to ignore that and carry on regardless.
And for me, that was it. It was be strong. You can't be seen to be weak or vulnerable. Hence, I would never cry. Hence, I would never feel my pain. Keep going, push through. Often pushing past our boundaries, and what we do is we don't listen to the body. So every symptom is a signal of something, and I think chronic symptoms, fatigue, pain, they're saying to you that something in your life isn't working for you, that maybe you're thinking about things in a certain way. Often there's a lot of stress and a lot of protection and negative thinking, because I know the feeling when, my children and my husband would make a comment and I would take everything negatively when I was in pain. And it was just like, they meant the complete opposite. But for me, in that stressful experience, I was just in the stress, high cortisol, high adrenaline, and everything was negative. So it really does ask us to be with it, look at it and see what it's showing us. What are we not happy with? What are we doing that we don't really want to do? What are we saying yes to and we want to say no? And we just ignore it because often we're busy. We don't give ourselves the time. I think giving ourselves time is such a key thing.
Oh, it's such a gift. Yeah, it's such a gift, and self-care. So unfortunately, I've got one last question to ask you because I'm mindful of the time. So now you've said you've recovered from fibromyalgia, and some people would say that there is no recovery. So now for you, health-wise, what's your biggest learning from this, and how are you health-wise now?
I've never been healthier. I'm really happy. I'm fit, healthy. I've climbed 2 mountains since. So I really, not that I particularly wanted to at any point in my life, but it was just something that happened. And I just see the whole of my future as we age. You know, you start thinking, and I find a lot of people do this, that, you know, you get more aches and pains, more illness, more problems as you get older. And I'm just quite at peace with that, because I think, well, I really take care of myself, my health and well-being, and actually me is now a priority when I used to be last on my list. And it's changed how I feel. Before my fibromyalgia, I never felt safe in my body or safe in the world.
Yes.
And now I don't have that. And I thought that was it. That was just normal. But I've now experienced something completely different. So we can be free of it. And I feel much more at peace. I feel much more loving towards myself. I never had that before. That was really new to me. And yeah, it's been the most incredible and enlightening adventure for me.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Kuljit, for sharing that, because I'm sure certain people watching this video will be nodding their head and thinking, yes. So it's always good to hear somebody else's experience, and particularly as you come from the medical background as well, because as we know, you know, there is a place for medicines, but they're not the whole answer either. And sometimes we have to look to ourselves, and we don't know how to do that. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So coming back to the beginning, we did a best and worst. And I'm very much about reframing. So self-care, absolutely, but reframing, because sometimes, let's be honest, when we get stressed and different things happen, it's very easy, as you mentioned as well, you focus on that and not on the other side. And we talk about gratitude. And sometimes I remember at one time when I was learning gratitude, you've got to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
And actually, it doesn't mean that. However, sometimes when we think that we're unhappy with something, I find that's a great time to stop and think, okay, what's my unhappy about? You know, what can I do? How can I reframe it? So going back to you, and you're saying about your daughter being in Birmingham and all the different noises from your neighbours, etc. So you have got two, but you can have two. How did you reframe that for yourself?
Well, first thing was actually just sitting with it for a minute. So taking my time, stopping and slowing down, and then realizing actually we can be FaceTiming or Skyping with my daughter, and we did. So that was great. And that there was no loss of connection. It felt like a loss of connection, and there wasn't really, because we've actually messaged more and sort of kept in touch even more than we used to do. So it was the feeling of loss of connection, but it wasn't true. So I asked myself, well, is it true? And what can I do? So they're my questions that I normally ask. And with with that overwhelm and that stimulation, it was me having got used to that quiet time and realizing that I'd almost been triggered into when the kids were younger, where I had no time for myself. And so it was having the realization and then just making that time. And there was always one room in the house that I could go to and just close the door or put my earphones in and listen to a meditation. And sometimes when they came inside, I would go out in the garden because I love my garden, and I just got peace. So it was realizing that I can still have the space even with everyone here. So I think the questions I asked myself, is this true? And is there anything I could do?
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to mine. So my worst being, that was a weekend, and I'm trying to think what I said now, actually. I know I was being the weekend and think I was going to miss people, particularly my children. And like you, my daughter's very busy and she lives in Australia, but I did get that wonderful FaceTime, and it was great, and it was very relaxed, which was lovely. My son got to FaceTime him, and in fact we spoke a couple of times again, which was lovely. And what was even better was I'm actually enjoying, like you, because of the sunshine, that time to just be. Read a book.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Kuljit. We look forward to catching up with you another time.
Yeah, brilliant.
And for anybody watching this, thank you for watching. And if you've got any questions, please put them in the comments or contact us. And if you wait, you'll see a contact for both myself and for Kuljit at the end of this video. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Bev. It's a pleasure.